Hello, and welcome to the Create a Life You Love podcast. I'm your host, Siobhan Collier. My purpose is to empower and lift up others who know in their heart they're meant for more. More joy, more impact, and more passion. If you're ready to make a radical transformation and create a life that you love, then you have come to the right place. Let's do this. Welcome to today's episode of the Create a Life You Love video podcast, where we get to connect with people from all over the world to share tips and strategies designed to help you on your journey. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Siobhan Collier. I'm an author, a speaker, a transformation neurocoach, and a certified life purpose coach. I specialize in helping women connect with their unique purpose and permanently removing the blocks that are holding them back so that they can fully step into their potential and live an aligned and fulfilling life of impact. So those of you with us live, this is being streamed live. So feel free to put comments and questions in the chat, and we will be sure to get to them as it makes sense in the flow of our conversation. If you're catching the replay, you can use hashtag replay and interact just as if you were with us live, and we'll be sure to respond later. And if you are catching this on the podcast or YouTube, then you can reach out to either the guest or myself with any questions, and we would love to connect with you. Speaking of my guest, I'm super excited to bring Siobhan Collier back today. She was here a couple weeks ago, excuse me, with Nikayla about the tea, which I'm drinking some of her tea this evening on our episode. And Saban came back today specifically to talk about how she's the founder of 25th Hour, where she aspires to fill the enormous void in economic access and opportunities for historically overlooked communities, such as the middle class population, and then to bridge the widening financial literacy and credit education gaps across the United States. So she's a longtime serial entrepreneur and a multiple business owner, and she's going to share some amazing tips that are going to help us keep calm this tax season, learn about credit, learn how to make good financial choices, whether we're entrepreneurs or not. So excited to have you back. How are you today, Saban?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Wonderful. And share with us where you're joining us from, the best city ever.
Yes, Wichita, Kansas.
And those of you who are not from Wichita, you probably think we're being like facetious, but I'm not. But don't tell too many people, like, don't move here and blow up our city. Like, we've got really great cost of living and no traffic, so leave us alone.
Right. Yes.
But it is such a cool place to live. I really have enjoyed it, and I'm really glad to be calling it home since 2007. Okay, so tell us a little bit about like your journey, like how and why did you get into 25th Hour and just all of that?
All right. Well, ironically, my first real, well, I call it real job, and when I turned 18 was to be a debt collector, and I had no idea what that consisted of. I was just happy to get out of fast food, and so I learned about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and found that there's some different avenues to pivot from there to then enter into the mortgage industry, as I saw that there was a better opportunity to better serve the community from the background that I had. So I started helping people with challenged credit purchase homes. So I would educate. I always just have a passion. I'm just a humanitarian. So I really enjoyed seeing people get excited about their first step at becoming a homeowner. And then I transitioned to being the director of operations and vice president of acquisitions for a distressed receivables company, which is basically a debt collection agency that purchased debt. And from there, I just found that combining this background of my knowledge base that I've acquired from taking the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act to the Fair Credit Reporting Act in knowledge, and also what I've seen in the banking industry, where people will come in and I'm seeing them get tax returns and they're saying, I have $10,000 checks, I want cash. I'm like, do you want to leave some money in the bank? I'll go ahead and put 100. So there's there's just been plenty of experiences that led me here where I'm just wanting to help educate people on what's the best next steps to have a better life, especially since the pandemic has hit our economy in such a bad way.
Oh, absolutely. And so you saw the need through your experience as a debt collector, which initially just started as a job for you. It was just a job
Right.
opportunity. You took it, but then you learned kind of the ins and out of the business and saw such a need.
Mhm.
And then your heart was like, I've got to help these people.
Yes.
That's
And I
amazing.
did, yes. I did in the bank. They call it the Saban Shuffle because I set up, I taught them because a lot of people would live literally once you get an overdraft protection, you're constantly going back into this hole. It's similar to payday loans where you pay this off and then they're going back to needing to get it back again to continue life. So I showed people to have one account for their incoming, which is their deposit. That's the direct deposit account. And then have a second account for outgoing expenses. So you're only using that overdraft once and transferring that money over that that particular bank allows for you to use the overdraft protection as cash. So typically most banks, it's just covering the checks or debits, but this bank would allow you to pull the actual cash out, but they would just become a big gigantic mess with several negative charges. So I helped them better manage that, and to where people would just come to me and I'd have 6 people in line for me and wouldn't go to my
Oh,
other coworkers. So yeah.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, So, from all the things that you've learned and all the ways that you help people now with your business 25th hour, which I'll get that linked here in the comments in a second. But just go ahead and tell us, like, what are some of the tips and the things that people should be looking out for? I know we talked about before we jumped on and why we chose this time of year with the tax season. You really want to hit on like things to do and not to do if you get a big tax refund, because it may not be as helpful as you thought it would be. So, yeah, what tips do you have?
Well, the first thing I'd notice is people get excited. They're like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to be responsible. They have goals. They want to purchase a home or something as a goal. And credit always has been holding them back. So the first thing people typically do is just start paying off a bunch of items on their credit report, thinking that's going to build their credit score. And there's a lot of myths out there. I saw that today I was tagged and someone was saying, oh, just don't get caught in that credit game. Just live with cash and just live it, beneath your means and, pay things off that don't use credit. That's what you need it for is, your insurance is graded based on your credit score, a lot of employers. So I say just take that. First, make sure you get all 3 credit reports. They're TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And once you have all 3 of those credit bureaus, those are the main credit bureaus that institutions look for to make a decision. Even when you're purchasing a home, they use all 3 credit scores and base it on the middle score of the 3. So the lower score, the higher score, what's in between, that's what it is. Well, you typically will find that there would be something on one credit report that's not on another credit report, or and Experian seems to be one of the most popular ones that companies use, and there are some institutions when you're purchasing a home that may not use all 3, but it's very standard. So just get all 3 credit reports and look at what's on there, because when you think, oh, I just have this, and you thought you took care of everything, you may have missed something. And then when you're attempting to reach your goal, you're applying for credit, you have the inquiry that hurts you because they are a major marker on your your actual overall score. So do not just get those 3 credit reports, and then, like I said, go through and make sure that you can identify those accounts, making sure that if there is an issue on one credit report, you want to look at what the date of that is. And if you say it's a large amount and you're working with a small budget and you just want to use that money and spread them around other multiple debts, and so you feel like, okay, I'm making some progress, Well, there's a statute of limitation on these accounts. So if the debt is over 7 years old, for instance, or, say in the state of Kansas, every state has a different laws. So in the state of Kansas, for instance, a signed agreement, they have 5-year statute of limitation to sue you, as opposed to a non-signed agreement, there's 2-year. So say you took a lump sum of money and you spread it around a bunch, multiple bills, and then and you set a payment arrangement with these companies to make payments, but then a hardship happens, an unforeseen circumstance, and you're unable to commit to that obligation. Well, you reactivated that statute of limitation on that debt. So then now they have the power to go back to the original date of service, add all of the interest that has accrued over that time, and send it to the collection attorney, file a judgment, and now you're in a deeper situation. So it's just really helpful to have that guidance to, make sure that you don't just make this mistake and then you're not prepared for what could potentially happen in the future. So that's one of the things that I found people to do, because again, a debt collection, say you owe AT&T and they send it to a first placement, one company, they weren't successful. They keep it there for so long, and then they'll take the account back, send it to another one, and they'll just keep going. And so you may feel like, oh, it's not on there, but they can take it off and put it on. That's a whole new cycle. And so again, like I said, it may be a debt that was owed from several years ago, but it's being moved around and you just want to do the right thing, And so I just really heavily push to be careful of how you decide to navigate that with your taxes, and just know you just reach out to the right counsel and resources to educate you through that. There's the other thing is, some people feel that with tax season, again, their goal is to build their credit score. So say you did pay off whatever is on your credit report, everything on all 3 bureaus, you're not really sure that that's going to actually give you a certain score to make you available for whatever your goal is. If it's purchasing a home and you want to hit the certain mark to get the better rate or interest rate. So you don't want to take that, you don't want to take that money and just go and pay it off and then think that that's the only thing that's going to just magically build your credit score, because sometimes it does build your score. Actually, it takes a few months, because the credit report, they're reporting, the scoring system, the FICO scoring system, looks at it as a new activity on an old derogatory account. So it's not necessarily going to raise your score immediately, but it will, say in a month or 2, maybe 3. And then you're finding that you still are meeting that level of the score that you need to accomplish your goals. So I always tell people you need to offset the negative with some positives. So you need to build some positive credit to feed that credit score. And it takes time, but there's multiple ways to do it. And again, everyone's situation is different. And I find people giving advice that they think is legitimate, and it's misguiding. So to me, it kind of hinders people, especially when you're going to a bank and they turn you down and then they don't give you any help. They don't say, do all of these things and you'll be fine. You're just left like defeated. It's like, well, I guess I can't do that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned it being really important to stay on top of those 3 major credit reports. How often do you recommend getting them? And do you recommend doing like all 3 at once, or like cycle through? What do you recommend there?
I recommend, honestly, to have a credit monitoring. For instance, like Credit Karma is a very popular one, where you would typically be able to have access to all 3 of your credit reports. And then that way you'll always be notified if something substantially changes, because sometimes things are added there that are inaccurate. And a lot of times people aren't realizing that that's there, and then they apply for something, and then all of a sudden, because with all of these scams going on, identity theft, you have to at least have that at your fingertips. So then what's nice, Credit Karma gives you the tools of saying, okay, these are the things that you can do. These are the different credit cards that you can apply for. But again, one thing that people do not realize is when you apply for those credit cards, you don't know if that credit card is reporting to all three credit reports, because a lot of times it's just one. Even the bank I worked at, I didn't know at the time that that was only getting their, that credit card was only going to Experian. So all this, the time that people were excited about getting that credit card, it was only helping one credit report build. So I think that monitoring that and just keeping track, at least on a monthly basis, would be helpful so you can see the changes. So if you were in a hurry and you're excited to get an offer and you were approved and you never were before, and then you're noticing, well, why is it only on this credit report, not the other two? So just pay attention to that and ask the right questions. But, and again, monitoring your credit report on a monthly basis would be great.
Yeah. And so I know there's sometimes saying out there about like, well, don't do that. That'll be a ding on your credit report. Can you talk
Yeah.
to the reality, like what's real?
Right. Well, inquiries, people, this is the other thing. Don't panic when you're facing a financial crisis that's daunting. And I know it's paralyzing sometimes, where people just will shut down, literally. And my skill set when I work with people as a debt collector, you're looked at as like the enemy. I've had a lady send me flowers from New York because she was
No.
so happy that I helped guide her through, and not just in a negative way. It's like, let's talk about what can be done and come to a solution. But people will go and just say, okay, or you're at the, it's Christmas time and you're like, oh, I get a discount if I apply for this credit card and it's going to save me some money. But it doesn't help you over the long term. Even shopping for a car, like right now, that's another thing people typically do. They'll take a large lump sum, put it down on a car, and they're, because of their credit score, it's challenging. They're not getting the right rate. They're requiring more down. And then what happens is you're just lost in a abyss of just not getting the better rates. You're not getting the opportunities that others are, so that have a stronger score. So I really do feel that if you focus on just don't panic and applying for a bunch of credit, like the car dealerships, you can go in there. It's happened to me before. I said, I just want to look. I received the advertisement in the mail. I was like, I'll go check it out. He said, just fill out this form. We're not going to we just need to get your information. Well, what he did is he took that without my permission and shopped it around to a whole bunch of lenders. And all of a sudden I had a huge amount of inquiries. And those inquiries impact, once you have over three inquiries, it impacts your score by 10%.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So when you're shopping for cars and or actually mortgages, especially if it's within a certain window, it isn't as a negative, especially if you receive the credit. But if you're out here and nothing new happens and you have a bunch of these inquiries, then it sets you back by 10% away from the goal that you were originally trying to accomplish, or then sets you into the category of you're not getting the rate that you should have had you not been shopping around to several different places. So I always tell people, I've had better success with credit union as opposed to a bank. And I'm not trying to just, bash banks or anything, but credit unions tend to work better with helping their customers build their credit scores. And so if you go to your bank, and your credit union is what I recommend first as your first stop. So, and instead of filling out forms when you're at, the dealership, for instance, and that way you can at least have a pre-approval, what you're working with. And if you're not in that position and you don't have that, because again, relationships is important to the banking industry. So the longer you have the banking relationship, the stronger you are as a customer going to them asking for some help. So credit unions, to me, my personal preference, is a better solution for someone that's trying to at least build their credit.
Awesome. So if someone does find themselves in over their head with credit, talk to us a little bit about like credit repair and things like that that exist out there.
Okay, well, so the credit repair companies are in place because we're honestly in a microwave society. We are too busy to do it ourselves. You know, a lot of times, like I've counseled so many people over the years and told them like, this is all you have to do. And they're like, just how can I just pay you? You know, and it's really just leveraging the opportunity to look at, I say that the Fair Credit Reporting Act is there to protect the consumer, as well as a Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is in place because of the abusive debt collection practices and from the collection industry, where they're not supposed to call you after 9, they can't call you multiple times a day. But if you are a business owner and it's a business debt and the account comes over in the business name, they can call you back to back nonstop. There's not not as many protections for businesses in that aspect, but with regard to a consumer, you can leverage the dispute process. If there is something that you're saying, I wasn't late this payment, this shouldn't be late in January, and I paid it on time, or I paid it within that window, that could potentially be removed. And a lot of times, these companies don't even, for instance, if it's a collection agency, a lot of times these larger companies will send what they call it send over is on a tape, where they'll just send the data over electronically without the documentation to support the debt. So in the event, sometimes if you're asking, okay, I need you to provide me with a copy of this original agreement that I signed for this credit card or for what have you, they wouldn't have it. So then they would have to remove it if it's not proven within 30 days. So it's years ago when I was in debt collection and we didn't have the technology we have today. So there was a lot of times where a lot of things just just got dismissed and removed off the credit report and taken out of the collection agency. But that doesn't necessarily mean if you're paying that collection or this credit repair company money and they successfully remove a lot of items from your credit report, again, it's not automatically going to raise your score in a way that you know exactly what to predict. The best way, like I said, is to offset it with positives. But although it will help improve your score, who's to say that that company doesn't take it from that agency and go to a whole different one and the cycle continues? So yes, the tax season, people like to take their money and pay debts off and you know, make payments or what have you, or get closer to being debt free. But just keep in mind that you think that if you are successful getting something off your credit report and you're saying, oh, I don't have to pay it now, it could potentially keep going and going to different agencies. So just try to just get it knocked out is the easiest way to just stop it at that time, as opposed to the other. So there's like even the addresses, like there's some minuscule things such as the address that's on the account is not accurate. That's one thing that people could typically use as their way to get it removed from their credit. So the credit, like my whole point is, there are several ways to use the way the laws are set under the Fair Credit Reporting Act and combined with the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If you are dealing with something that was in debt collections on the report, it could, you know, it can get removed, but it's not necessarily the permanent fix. Just like a judgment, they may have just needed more time to gather it, and so they'll just get the documentation to the company late past that 30-day period, and then now it's back on your credit report. So the credit repair companies do help, and it's convenient because you don't have to do all the work because you're going back and forth. You're sending letters, it takes 30 days, you may have to send another letter. Sometimes I've seen accounts take 9 months. I've personally had a situation where the hospital here in town did not file my insurance.
Oh,
and so and then it became too late to file the insurance by the time they were trying to charge me $3,000 for the birth of my child. And so I had every Friday I would go and direct to that hospital and go back and forth, and I kept at it, and it took 9 months to finally get them to prove, like the documentation that you sign when you actually go into the hospital says that you're responsible for the balance after insurance. Key words, after the insurance has been filed, and they file it out of courtesy. However, they had my insurance on file. They chose not to, or they failed to file the insurance. So I had to push them aggressively until they finally realized, okay, fine. What you're legitimately owed is what the insurance wouldn't have paid. And that was a $75 semi-private room stay. And then once that was paid, it was done. And they had to remove it from my credit. So, but there's so many different situations I can go on and on about, but everyone's situation is really different. And you just have to look at what that particular situation is and tackle it based on your budget, based on your credit report, all three bureaus, what the, if it's a hospital, so many factors.
Wow. And so by staying on top of your credit report with those three credit agencies really kind of helps you keep your thumb on it and stay on top of things.
Yes. And the other thing is a lot of times people just they're so overwhelmed. They know that their budget is so far and they can't handle an extra bill. They're already living close to paycheck. And all of a sudden you have something come in the mail that's a bill that you forgot about, and then now it's in collections. Well, that first notification letter is explaining that you have 30 days to dispute this bill, or they're going to place it on the credit report, and they can pursue further collection activity, which could mean it could go also to their collection attorney, and then your bill is going to accrue interest from the entire time it's a judgment place if you don't show up for court, and that sort of thing. So what I always say is open those letters, and even if it's saying, okay, I can work out a payment arrangement and pay it off before it hits my credit report in 30 days, or if you're just not sure, you don't remember exactly the details, you can dispute it. Ask them for their email address. I personally don't like to mail things, so I'm all about technology. So I'll, if that's an option, if they will provide you with an email address, then just email them. I'm disputing this debt. Please provide me documentation. I don't recall this, or whatever the reason is. And then that at least gives you time to get your ducks in a row. If this comes back as, yeah, this is definitely something that you do owe, and they have proof that you owe this bill. So then it doesn't hit your credit report, and you can take care of it because they have to cease on that. Okay. But if you just throw it away and then just builds up, then it's on your credit report, and you just calculate as it comes. So
what, the ostrich head in the sand isn't the tactic you recommend?
No, unfortunately, a lot of times we just want to just run away and just escape the reality, and it just becomes overwhelming. But just take some breather, just take a few breaths. There's several different solutions out there. You don't know what to do by yourself. There is definitely help. I mean, especially with self-employed people typically use their credit to manage their business sometimes. And that could become an issue when something comes up. Your cards are maxed out, that drops your credit score. 30% of your credit or of your balance is, once you're at over 30% of the collective balance, or the credit limits, 30% of the credit limits that you have on your credit cards collectively, it starts dropping your score. So say you have $1,000 combined on all of your credit cards, and you now owe $700. Well, your score has gone down due to that. But if you manage it being at 30% at $300 and not allowing it to go over that, then it'll keep your score stronger. But when you're in business, sometimes that doesn't afford you that opportunity.
Absolutely. That is a very real statement. So what about what do they call it? Debt consolidation places. Like, what is your advice there?
Well, there are, and I don't know if you're probably referring to the credit counseling, the credit counseling companies, the consumer credit counseling organizations. What they do, it can be helpful for those that are way overwhelmed. I mean, they can have something that they did not expect to happen, and they feel like it's a huge relief to have one monthly payment, and then that company is distributing those payments out to the different creditors. However, again, there's other ways that you could take care of those bills as opposed to going to this organization, because they're not looking at all the details. They're not looking at the things that I'm referencing with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FDCPA. How old is the debt, or is it something they can negotiate and settle? So you can just pay one debt at a time. Would that be the better solution? Paying it off once, like say you have a budget of $500, where you have one bill that's $300. Well, if that can knock out one bill, then it brings up the amount that the next month you can attack the other ones. But if you're managing the minimum monthly payments, or if it's already charged off, then that's a different situation. So I really just like to say there's not a fix all for just generalized solution. It's customized, and it has to be organically set for that particular couple or that individual, to ensure that whatever the consumer credit counseling companies don't really look at that. It's like cookie cutter. So we're going to take all of this. We have the agreements. We'll stop the interest and we'll help pay. And a lot of times it is a perfect solution for some people, but then there's other alternatives that could have worked out had they sought other avenues, but those companies are just more cookie cutter. So if you have a really massive issue, then yes, I highly recommend that.
Gotcha. And so then the other option would be a company such as 25th Hour, right? Is that something you guys help people with?
Yeah, I mean, again, yes, because it's not a cookie cutter solution here. We're not going to just say, we're just going to set you up on a payment plan and pay off your debts. We'll look at creative solutions to help expedite improving your situation and educating you along the way, because to me that is the most important piece that they're not getting through consumer credit counseling, of educating you on different topics, from purchasing cars and or your insurance, shopping for insurance, or just managing your money to where you can knock off these debts, or if it's charged off, it's not like it's accruing interest. These are people that are typically at the point where they're ready to almost file bankruptcy. And I've always recommended that is like, absolutely not. Do not do that. Because that's just, a lot of people do have some great success stories. President Trump has proven that you can file bankruptcy and still be a millionaire, keep your assets. It's a very protective method. That is why the laws have changed, because a lot of people would live for the Joneses, and I'll just file Chapter 13. I still be able to have my assets, So, yeah, there's definitely lots of different options out there, but customized approach to me is the best way to go.
Absolutely. And then I know a big thing, not everybody in my audience is self-employed, but lots of them are, and that is more what I'm heading into as we progress through 2022, is really helping online coaches build their online business, impact and income that they are destined for. And so can you talk a little bit about, with it being tax season, what are some things that self-employed people should be looking at?
Well, I would say one, a friend of mine is a tax preparer, and she mentioned recently a lot of her clients that are self-employed, or even have their side income, but are employed as employees, but also have a side income. They're apprehensive to file their taxes right now because they're nervous of the fact that they received a PPP loan. So they're concerned that money would be considered taxable income. And so if I was told, I'm not a tax preparer, I'm not a financial advisor, so please do not just assume. But she said that as long as it was forgiven, it's not going to impact your your income status, or it's not taxable income for you when you are filing. So you're not having to worry about now increasing the amount of revenue that you're worried that you're going to be owing a lot of money, so that is one thing is, if you are forgiven on the PPP, it's not going to affect your taxes, is from what I understand now. um, as I said, I'm not a tax preparer, so don't try. And then another thing is, a lot of people don't realize that there are 475 tax deductions
Wow.
for home-based businesses or self-employed, um, that a lot of times aren't really being used. I mean, just think about it. All of the different tax laws, and there's a volume at this time of year that these tax preparers or these CPAs or these major places like H&R Block and Jackson Hewitt, all these different companies, I'm not sure that their system is picking up on that, or even asking those questions to ensure that you're
Mm.
getting every single dollar that you're entitled to. Because I know that there's been over $2 billion of money on the table, from money that that could have been in your pocket that wasn't used as a deduction. And so I've even did a experiment, and I sent someone. I said, hey, I guarantee if you go to my CPA, you're going to get more of a return than you continue to go to this major chain, getting your taxes filed. That's what they committed to do all the time. And so I said, look, just go in there and let them tell you how much your taxes will be, your return, if you're going to get a return or if you're going to owe. Let them tell you how much it's going to be. And then now just say, okay, I'll be back. And then you go to my CPA, and this particular person saw $3,000 more as
Wow.
a return in their pocket just from not going to that, major company. I'm not going to say. And so with that said, again, I don't even know if my CPA was using all of those 475 different deductions. I know a lot of things nowadays are technology. It's online, and even if you're filing your taxes yourself, trying to save money, a lot of times some people think that if I do this, it's going to save me money, but it may end up costing you more in the end, because you don't know if you're really getting all of those deductions. So what 25th Hour is in the process of doing is, we're staging the improvements on our website, where there will be a questionnaire in place for the self-employed to go in and just answer the questions. And what we'll do is going to populate a report that you can take to your CPA, that's also going to reference the actual tax law. So then that way they can't say, well, that's not true. It's right here. Because again, this may be something that's teaching them, because there's so many thousands of different laws that they're not going to know every single avenue. So a lot of companies are good at finding every single loophole, but I'm just saying we need as much money as we can to help grow businesses and enhance our lifestyle. So just be mindful of the fact that there are a lot of different loopholes. There are a lot of different deductions that you can take advantage of. And you might want to just ask your CPA and say, hey, just ask the right questions. How many deductions, or, I can, guide you with saying, okay, these are the different things that you possibly could get as a deduction this year. Ask your CPA to incorporate that, to ensure. And you could even take that information, don't even give it to your CPA, test it out. Say, okay, file my taxes, please. And then come back and ask the questions. Well, did you do this, this, and this, and this? And then have them go and include those and see the difference, so you can test it yourself to see that this is definitely going to help increase the bottom line for your business growth, as well as your peace of mind of having more money in your pocket. So
I personally don't like money in my pocket. I'm just kidding. Yes, who doesn't want that? So you said that is going to be something that's added to your website in the near future. But right now, if somebody had questions, they can schedule an appointment with you.
Right. Yes. And typically we have a 30-minute consultation. It's complimentary. However, for all of those that are in your audience, I'm extending that time to an hour. So you get more time to have some, you know, solutions provided to you and guidance, and just kind of get to know your situation, and kind of point you in the right direction. So
Amazing. Thank you. That's so generous. So, everyone, definitely go to 25thhour.net and set up your free consultation, and let them know you heard about them on the Create a Life You Love video podcast, and get that 30 minutes extended to an hour and get some in depth guidance and next steps for you. That's awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
There's like heart emojis going crazy over on Facebook right now. Um, those of you with us live, any questions you have, go ahead and pop them in the chat and we'll get to them here shortly. Oh, it looks like, nope, that was on something else. Um, awesome. Very cool. Anything else related to this? I also want to be sure that we save a little bit of time for you to kind of touch base on your other business too, just for anybody in the local area so they know another thing that they could reach out to you for.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Right now, I think I've touched on uh, the one thing that I just was very common to me to see is, from my experience at this time of year, people just, I'm just going to pay all this stuff off, and I'm going to magically have my credit score. I'm going to approach um, purchasing my home. Just know that even if you do and you're successful, because honestly, you can, oddly enough, purchase a home with a 500 credit score with a FHA loan, but you end up paying 10% more, as a down payment, and your credits or your interest rate would be much higher than someone with a better score. But it's definitely possible, but there's still some underwriting guidelines, which I haven't been in the mortgage lending industry space in several years, and it's substantially changed since I left in 2008. So but it is possible. It's not saying there's no way to accomplish this, but I definitely would say, right, this is the amount of another alternative people typically do. They're saying, well, my credit's not where it needs to be, but I'm going to take my time. I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of the rent to own
Mm.
opportunities. And I look at those as like a used car dealership that knows that a lot of people at tax time, they put all this money into a car. Then April, May, June, that car is being repossessed because they went above and beyond. They're a lot of times their payment's so much higher because their credit wasn't at the point where they have a more affordable rate. They're just excited to have something shiny and new, and they needed it, but they wanted something nicer than what they had. I don't know. There's just whatever the reasons are. But if renting to own, you're putting yourself at a risk where you're saying, I can't buy a house now, but I want to buy a house, and by any means necessary, this is how I'm going to do it. Well, they'll have a certain stipulation on how long that you are renting to own, and a portion of that monthly payment is going to go towards the purchase of the home, but you have to put down so much money to acquire this home. But what most times, majority of the time happens, you're not where you need to be credit score wise, or say, I've seen this before. There's people paying their mortgage or their payment to their person that's owner carrying the house on the contract rent to own with cash, or they're just getting money orders and paying it with that, but it's from Quick Trip or a gas station. There's not a payment history, so they couldn't verify that they were even buying this house. There is no, the lender, the bank, the underwriting, nowhere can you go is going to say that they believe, even just receipts. You can't, I mean, you can go, they look at it as if, well, you can go and just buy a book of receipts and change the dates and write these out. How do we know you really were paying these payments to then transition the home? So you might be in a better position and have everything in place and you're so excited, but just because you didn't have it set up in the proper way with paying with cashier's check, or another way is having a contract for deed where it's actual recorded mortgage, and you're going to the title company is actually who's making this transaction happen for you. You're actually having a true closing, and the seller is now listed on the deed as the mortgage. A lot of times the homeowners, the sellers don't like doing that, because now in the event this buyer that is, you know, obligated to pay their monthly payment has something unfortunate happen and they stop paying it, now they're subjected to the foreclosure process where they can, that takes a long time. And so now they're tied down to where they're not going to be able to get any recourse on getting these people out of their home and recovering that income for up to a year at times. So a lot of times, if the seller is very familiar with that process, they're not going to do it. They're not happy with it. They'd rather do a rent to own because they are protected. If you don't, you have an actual lease, you're not an owner. And so the eviction process would be more applicable as opposed to the foreclosure process. So if you put yourself in their shoes, you're probably going to want to do the eviction as opposed to the foreclosure. So, but I highly recommend the contract for deed if that is something, if someone is like, I'm not ready, but I want to buy. But in this housing market, it's I think there's not a lot of homes, and from the supply and demand aspect, it's still a seller's market. So, but there's definitely, like I said, creative solutions to purchasing a home. And this time of year, this is one thing that people typically do. And I just say, be very careful. If you are going to take the rent to own approach or the owner carry approach, just don't do it blinded, because you can have hiccups. Or say you are self-employed. A lot, you can't go anywhere to get lending. Your own bank will most likely tell you, I'm sorry, you have to be self-employed for 2 years before they even help you with anything, even if it's $1,000 and you're just needing it to just pivot your business just a little bit further. That's typically the issue. But there are now some more robust solutions that I found. Like, I think it's called the Propel loan here in town. Again, you have to be in business 2 years. So that time frame is really a hindrance when you're really needing to pivot and you don't have that backing, and your resources are limited. And so a lot of times we'll end up going to alternative financial options, and then it costs them more in the end in terms of the interest rates, higher rates or unconventional lending opportunities. So, but I can tell you there's just a plethora of different things, but those are the main ones I want to touch on, because that is what I would see a lot at this time of year, is people getting into the wrong situation with purchasing a home that's outside the norm of just going to the mortgage company or going to paying off a bunch of debts and then not realizing your score is still not really moving as where you need it to be, because you don't have the positive credit to help offset that. So those are my takeaways that I want people to stick to. And then, at least with that little bit of guidance and knowledge, I do have workshops that we can host for our members and just customize it for whatever their situation is to help get them on the path to success. So I look forward to talking to your audience here in the near future.
Awesome. So definitely go to 25thhour.net and schedule your appointment, just a consultation call, and see what all Saban can do for you. And that is you do that online, so anybody in the US can access that, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. And then tell us quickly about your other business, ICT Germ Busters.
Well, we actually are a janitorial service, and we mostly clean offices, buildings, commercial spaces, as well as, we have clients that are residential as well. But what sets my business apart from the competition is we do incorporate the fogging for COVID and other germs that could, like the flu and a long list of others. But we will fog the surface in the air to clean it. But we also have a sealant that will lock in the disinfectant on the surfaces for up to 90 days. Some surfaces that are high touch areas, you want to retouch in the 30-day period. But overall, it's just a nice solution to, especially with the pandemic right now, and it's getting COVID left and right. It's just another step to help overcome the cleanliness issues. So I do incorporate that into a package for residential customers or businesses, and saying, okay, I'm not trying to, just get it fogged once a quarter and that's it. And then we can come in and just clean the air. I've had churches that saying, okay, if you could just do it right before Sunday service. So that way we know that we have the air clean and we have a sealant on the surfaces. So it's an extra steps of layers of protection. So that's what we've been doing to at least help slow the spread in our city and help our community.
Very cool. And so I dropped that in the chat as well for anybody that is in the Wichita area and is interested in more information. Go to that website and just connect with Saban and get that information. Awesome. And I like to ask all of my guests if they have any daily non-negotiables. Like, you run multiple businesses, you have 4 children, is that right? Yes.
2 at home. So I kind of decided, hey, why not have 2 more when I have 2 grown kids? So
Nice.
starting all over.
Yeah. So you are busy powerhouse. And so what is a daily non-negotiable that helps you kind of just stay centered and successful?
Well, I'm putting fires out every day. No matter how much I plan the night before and have it on my calendar, there's something that happens. And I think that I have a gift of crisis management, where I come up with a solution to something that happens on the fly. And I guess I love that challenge, to put it out. So I just think that just staying calm, I know it's hard to do when you're just already having a manic Monday, or just unforeseen situations that happen. But for me, I honestly like to listen to an audiobook throughout the day that just helps me stay centered and reminding myself, okay, it's going to naturally work itself out. Don't focus on what you can't control, focus on what you can control, and move things around. It's not a big deal if you have to. Just really communicate very well. That's very important to me. Communication, compromise, and sacrifice is like my major. I always oversay that to my friends and my peers, because my quote, I'll go back to this. My favorite quote is, when you change the way you see things, the things you see change. So when you have so when you have a lot of things happen, and instead of focusing on the negative, find the positive out of the situation, focus on what you can do. And if it's involving a customer or your peer, your coworker, your family member, your significant other, I always have this as, I have to do this. And I can identify where there's a problem. And if there's even any need to keep going forward, and you just have to just agree to disagree, or knowing that conversation is not going to work, which is communication, compromise, and sacrifice. Both parties have to communicate. So if you're in a situation with a customer or whoever, and you have to just communicate to then both of you come to a compromise. You may not like moving from what you want to do, but in order to come to a solution, just come to a compromise, and both parties have to agree to that. Then the sacrifice comes into play, because now both parties have to sacrifice something to come to that compromise. So if you see that someone is just stuck and they will not budge, then now you go to the choices, chances, and changes. You know, you make the choices, you've given those chances, and now you have to adjust to the changes that have been put in place. So
I love that. Wise words. Today on my afternoon walk, I heard two things that stuck out to me that align with what you're saying. So I was listening to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich for like the third or fourth time. I just love that book. And so he was talking about how to be successful in life and in business, you have to have a pleasing personality. And so that aligns with what you're saying about sometimes you have to compromise. And if you come in and you're like my way or the highway, well, you're probably not going to be in business very long, and you might not have a lot of friends.
right.
And then the other thing that really stuck out was choose to respond, not react.
Exactly. Yes. And are you familiar with Dale Carnegie's I believe it's How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yes.
That's another gem too.
Yes.
That's on my list.
Yes, there's several that I just think like you should read every year or so. Just
pick it up,
reread it, listen to it while you're driving or walking, whatever. Just get that knowledge in there. And I also rewatched The Secret the other night, and I hadn't seen that since it came out on Netflix like 2007.
That's one
and
of
I was like, yeah, I'm like, this might just be like a Friday night watch once a month. Like,
oh yeah,
their stock footage is so incredibly cheesy, but the message is good.
oh yeah. I honestly still listen to it every day because sometimes you have to it's a mindset reprogramming. If you are on this busy life that we have, it's, you know, when my kids are asleep, which I'm sorry guys, you might have heard them in the background a little bit. That's my time for that reset. And so if it's watching The Secret or listening to my audiobook on Audible, it's just very relaxing. Even if it's a sleep meditation, I will put that on. So if I'm consciously getting some calming messages to help, you know, set me in the right space the next day, we just have to continue to find creative ways to insert that, because sitting down and reading a book, I love a physical book, but as much as I'm on the go, the audiobook is so helpful.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, I just looked up at the time and we need to wrap up, but thank you so very much for being here. Thank you everyone for watching live or listening to the replay or on whatever podcasting platform you enjoy listening from. Be sure to go and sign up for your free initial consultation, and it will schedule you for 30 minutes, but let her know that you came from the Create a Life You Love podcast, and you can get that extended to 60 minutes, which is amazing. Thank you. If you got value out of this episode, we just ask, you know, share it. Sharing is caring. Share it with someone you think might benefit from the message. And also leaving a podcast review is always very much appreciated. You can do that quickly and easily at ratethispodcast.com/Khalil. That's CALYL for Create a Life You Love. And it's all linked there for you. Next week, our guest is Denise Michelle, and she's beaten the odds with mental illness, sexual abuse, addiction, anxiety, suicidal depression, bankruptcy, and is now on a mission to help others rise. So she's going to be talking us through the benefits of living a vision-driven life, and you'll be able to find us right here in the Create a Life You Love community, or catch it on your favorite podcasting platform. Same time, same place, next Tuesday. Thank you again, Saban, and everybody. Enjoy the journey. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life You Love podcast. I would love to hear from you about your biggest takeaways. Share them with me on Facebook or Instagram at Create a Life You Love Coaching. If you love this podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. That's it for now. Enjoy the journey.